All right, guys, so let's talk about a movie that I'm sure a lot of you guys have not seen. I said this about Transformers 1 last week, but I think even less of you will have seen The Wild Robot. And this is going to be a little bit of a shorter segment because I will not be doing a spoiler discussion of The Wild Robot because I simply don't think a lot of you guys have seen it. And so, I know that this is coming out a couple weeks after the movie has come out. But I do hope that if any of you are out there and you are on the fence and maybe you have one of those subscriptions to AMC or Cinemark, it is my wholehearted recommendation that you go see The Wild Robot. And I'm going to give some reasons why, and perhaps those will help persuade you to go check out the movie because I do think it is well worth checking out. So I know that, again, a lot of you guys will probably have not seen the film and probably had very little interest in seeing this film. I, myself, didn't have super high expectations for it before the initial reviews were coming out. But once the initial reviews came out, it sold me to at least check it out, and I am so glad that I did. And if anyone out there, even one person out there watches this video and is convinced to go check out the movie, I would be so happy and so thrilled if that were the case. So, again, non-spoiler review of The Wild Robot. I'd love to just get a chance to talk about a film that I really enjoyed. So The Wild Robot is an animated film from DreamWorks, which DreamWorks, I think, last did Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and that was received incredibly well. But they're not, especially in terms of box office. I mean, Inside Out 2 making $1.6 billion. You're not going to see that, unfortunately, from a film like The Wild Robot. In fact, I'm recording this before a lot of the numbers have come out from the opening weekend, and I just don't expect this film to do quite well at the box office. And that's a shame because it deserves to do really well. It deserves to make $1 billion. If Inside Out 2 can make $1 billion, it deserves to make $1 billion, but it won't. Unfortunately, it won't. And I do encourage, if you guys can help the film out and then spread word of mouth, I think that'd be great because it's a smaller film. It's a film that was not, to be fair, marketed as heavily as something like Inside Out 2. I remember seeing a couple trailers for this movie and thinking it looks okay. It looks kind of cute. I never ever liked, in fairness to the to people who are maybe skeptical about the film, I never liked those lines that were included at the end of the trailer where Lupita Nyong'o's character goes, "I am a wild robot." And I go, okay, so it's one of those movies where it's just kind of so obvious and for kids and over the top. But like I said, I watched, or I read a lot of reviews and I realized that, well, a lot of critics were saying this is sort of a Pixar level film. It had a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think. And that's usually enough to convince me to go, okay, all right, let's go check it out. And so I did. And here's what I will say. This film, obviously I'm being facetious when I say this, but this film is not for kids. And I say that as somebody who is not a kid right now, but obviously was once a kid and watched these animated films. I grew up watching Pixar, like I've said many times on this channel. And I am continually amazed as I rewatch some of these Pixar films. And who knows, maybe we'll do a big Pixar rewatch once we're done with the DCE rewatch. But I'm continually amazed at just how these movies, especially the more profound and deeper ones, are made for adults, made by adults for adults that also have enough flashy fun for kids to learn something about. The Wild Robot is one of those movies. I actually think this might, and perhaps this will not make any sense to anybody here who has not seen the film. But if you have seen the film, maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about. As I was watching this film, I actually thought the audience that would resonate the most with a film like this are parents. And not just parents, but parents who have perhaps teenagers or even kids who are just going to college or moving out or things like that, where you have parents who are adjusting to a new reality of trying to watch their kids grow up. And that's obviously not something that kids could grasp. So in that regard, it is very much like a Pixar film in the sense that it is grasping and tackling these incredibly deep and profound themes while also having a lot of entertainment value. I'm going to be very, very vague with these plot details because I hope that, you can go into the film and enjoy it as much as you can without knowing a lot of what happens. But I mean, the main general premise is that there is a robot that is designed by a company that ends up somehow on this island. And this robot, again, voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, is basically forced to adapt to the island in a certain sense. And she meets a lot of really interesting characters along the way. There are a couple other big A-list actors that are doing voices here. Actually, one of the co-leads, I'll say, of the film is voiced by somebody that I didn't even recognize his voice throughout the film, because he did such a good job, and that's a credit to him. If you haven't, if you want to check out the cast list, I'm sure you'll be able to know who it is as soon as you see the list, because he's probably the biggest name aside from Lupita Nyong'o. But the credit goes to the voice cast here for giving incredible performances. But even aside from the deeper themes, and even aside from the profound messaging, it's also just a very entertaining film. It has a lot of entertainment value where you're not entertained necessarily by the shooting things and bright explosions and things like that, but more so just the journey that these characters go on. It's fun. It's funny. There are some really good quips in there. There's some good one-liners and some good gags, that visual gags, and things that will appeal to children. But also, I laughed a couple times. Actually, one of the things that surprised me about this film also is that it was really sharply written. There's a group of, I'm not going to say too much about them, but there's a group of young children characters in this film that say some of the funniest things that I've ever heard that will probably make kids laugh, but also will go right over their heads at just how funny they are. I was laughing consistently whenever these small children characters were coming on screen, which sounds crazy. You'll know exactly what I mean once you see the film. But on top of, so it's entertaining, even for people who are not kids, for adults. It's incredibly entertaining, and it's also, like I said, it has really profound themes that are simple and yet sweet. I found myself being on the verge of tears, not crying necessarily, not like Pixar, Coco, Inside Out sobbing, kind of thing, La La Land epilogue sobbing, but more just on tears in my eyes because of how a few of these storylines that we're playing out were played so genuinely and so impactfully that you could feel what exactly these writers were going for when they were, having these moments between characters. And it's at a certain point, you do know exactly where this film is going. It's not like it's trying to hide the big emotional climax at the end, but there are also surprises in there as well. Because, you think the direction of the film just based on, okay, this you've seen this kind of before. But it has, I don't know if you guys have read any Dr. Seuss. I remember also growing up reading a lot of Dr. Seuss. And it has a lot of shades of some of my favorite Dr. Seuss books when I was a kid, of characters who are so good-hearted and genuine and show you that there are good people in this world no matter what, and show you that who you are is not necessarily who you think you should be, without, again, revealing the entire movie's message. Because I could, if enough of you guys want it, I can definitely do an analysis of the film and its messages, because I think there's so much in here that can be discussed and can and should be talked about. So but anyways, going back to Dr. Seuss, it reminded me in particular of a couple of those books that I read. I read almost all of them when I was a kid. And definitely it reminded me of Thidwick. I don't know if you guys have read those books. This might just be complete nonsense for some of you because you haven't read Dr. Seuss books, but there was a book called Thidwick. It was a moose who really cared for a lot of animals that were around him. And I haven't read these books, obviously, for many, many, many years, but these books were so impactful because they still stuck with me. So Thidwick was one, and then there's the very famous Horton Hears a Who that was made into an animated film and whatnot. But there's another book that was written by Dr. Seuss called Horton Hatches an Egg that also was equally sweet and genuine from what I remember, at least. And this film reminded me of both of those books in particular. It had the whimsy and had the fun of seeing those bombastic visuals of Dr. Seuss, but also the really sweet heart at the center. I know it's kind of weird for me to be talking about Dr. Seuss in a review of The Wild Robot, but I want to intentionally keep a lot of the details of the film hidden, because that's how I went into the film, just having seen a couple trailers. You see the robot, you see the animals, and there's something going on there. But I would really encourage you guys, if you are interested, if you enjoy those movies where you feel good and you, not to steal Nicole Kidman's ad, but where heartbreak kind of feels good in a place like this, but not bad heartbreak, right? Really heartbreak that is, followed by triumphs and with love and with joy, and a film that will make you laugh. I laughed a few times, especially with a few characters in particular, and is entertaining. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't really connect with the themes, I think it's still just a really well-made movie that's beautifully animated, by the way. If nothing else, you could definitely walk into the film and look at an animated film that is beautiful to look at and really a visual spectacle for the eyes. So I would highly recommend, if you have the time, the money, the capacity to watch The Wild Robot. I know that there are other films coming out in the coming days and weeks, Joker Folie à Deux and Saturday Night and, you know, Venom and, you know, all these films that are coming out in the next couple of months, Moana 2. But I think that if you have kids, if you are a parent, or even if you're not, this is a film that I think will resonate very deeply and strongly with you. So I ask you guys, if you have seen The Wild Robot, what did you think of it? Do you think that this or Inside Out 2 is a better movie? It doesn't really matter. They're both amazing, in my opinion. They both deal with and tackle very adult and real themes while being wonderful, entertaining kids movies. And if you haven't seen it, are you interested in checking it out? I would, again, highly recommend it. Let me know in the comments down below.